So we don't pretend it's not happening. Acknowledge that and be compassionate for it, and yet see the divine that is within them. See who they are beyond all that.
Welcome to Energetics with Kim and Veronica, where we invite you to nourish the energy of your inner why, your inner healing, magic, prosperity, your curiosity, clarity, playfulness. Welcome home. Welcome to the next episode of the Energetics podcast. I am Veronica, joined by my lovely partner, Kim. Hi, Kim.
Hello, Veronica. Hello, everyone, and welcome. And thank you for being here, whether it's your first time
or your last,
or your whatever time.
Hopefully not your last.
Cute. You're so cute.
We appreciate your engagement, your listening, your watching, however ways you're contributing. We really appreciate everything you're bringing forth.
You're sharing.
Yes, you're sharing. Yes. Thank you so much. And so we thought today we'd dive into the topic of labels and identity and how we bucket ourselves into such and what that creates and doesn't create for us. I think it was inspired perhaps a little bit by Michael A. Singer, who we have mentioned before, who's the author of The Untethered Soul and The Surrender Experiment. The Surrender Experiment being one of our faves that we both really went deep into a few years ago. And I should probably read it again, but it's still in my top list, and I've read a gazillion books in this domain. So highly recommend it if you're looking for something to dig into. I think, in that book, or maybe both of the books, I don't remember where he mentioned it, but he talked a lot about how labels create mental noise. So, when we label things as good or bad, as, beautiful as ugly, it reinforces our mind's tendency to judge and to resist. And so when we can start to notice when we are creating those labels, then we can really encourage our mind to let go and to stop doing that and to invite in a new perspective. And that can really greatly transform the way that we experience and perceive and receive life.
Yeah, because you know what? A label is always going to be something that we're identifying with something from the past, right? And so we're not living in the moment. We're living from the past when we identify something like that. And there was something else I was going to say on that. Do it.
I love it. I love that you brought that in because it ties in exactly to what we were talking about in the last episode, which is that, our physical, we talked about how we have our higher selves, our soul, our spirit that are the conceivers of ideas. And then we have our physical brain that receives the ideas. And then our physical mind perceives the ideas. Like the mind that we're aware of is just perceiving. It doesn't know newness. It regurgitates what it's seen in the past, right? So to what you're saying here is we have these labels. It's what we've seen in the past. And so as soon as we put a label on something that's maybe fresh or new or repeated, maybe it's somebody we know or it's an experience we've had before. Once we put a label on it, we're just doing a reference to the past. And it actually changes our ability to receive the wisdom, the beauty, the love, the intelligence that is present in that moment.
100%. Yeah, I like the way you worded that. Very good. Yeah, and so, with the labels, I was looking also at how we identify ourselves as well as others because of the identity, whether they're showing up that way or whether that's the identity that we've given them, right? And at the same time, it is, people can change overnight. Doesn't mean they will, but they can, right? I've seen that. We're all changing every day. I forget how many days it takes for ourselves and everything to change, right? And yet we keep seeing ourselves as who we were yesterday. And there is, I think, some value in that. And as long as we're not putting it in the box of, I can't do this, I've always tried to do this, and hate me with technology, right? And don't you be laughing, Veronica. You can laugh. So yeah, so it's kind of like if I keep identifying myself as, oh, that never works for me. Oh my God, blah blah blah. And we know the universe has our back, and so that's how I'm wired to do in the I can't. And so when I can notice, how am I showing up? What identity am I showing up as right now? And I have so many examples in my own life of that, but I want to pause there. Veronica, what would you want to add to that about how we show up in our identity?
Yeah, I completely agree. Like there's the way that we identify ourselves, and then there's the way that we identify and label others. And so usually often when you're going into deep transformational work for yourself, looking at your potential and what can be transformed to achieve your potential or what requires evolution or healing, identity is often a key component of looking at how do you identify for yourself, because that will continue to create those repetitive patterns or experiences in our lives. And so if we can really look at creating a new identity, then our life transforms around it to align with that new identity. It's not easy to do, but it's really brilliant work to dig into.
And you know what the thing is, you try it on and you begin to rewire, and then it does become more ease until it becomes your norm. Now I just want to play with a couple examples here if you're okay with that. Yeah. And so for example, somebody I know and love dearly, yeah, it's a family member. She looking for the words here that match the energy without it being a story. She used to actually say, because my mom, when she was, oh my God, like when she would have been, well, she's always looked way younger, way younger than what the numbers, than what her birthday dictates. And so I remember one day my sister actually said to me, there I just identified which family member it was. Anyway, so she actually said to me, I don't want to look really young when I get older. And I said, why? And she said, because people won't give me the respect that I want if they don't think I'm older. And so I was curious about that. Oh, there goes an eagle. Thank you, eagle. Uh, I was curious about that conversation. And she said, no, she said, people need to respect their elders. And if I look really young for my age, like mom does, then I won't get that respect. And I just found that really interesting. Like, let's respect people no matter what, right? But she saw that if she looked old, then people would treat her differently. And she wanted that.
Fascinating. Fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then, for example, and so one of the things that I do that I'm like hilarious at is I'm like, I'm going to be 65 this month. Yay, me. And sometimes I'll find myself identifying myself in the way of, oh my God, I'm 65. If it hasn't happened for me yet, maybe this is it. Right. And so, whatever all of that is. And so, yeah, so different stuff like that. So yeah. So what about you, Miss V?
Yeah, it's interesting. Age is a fascinating one. I've noticed myself, I've really been contemplating over the last few years, is when I was younger, I thought that somehow I thought that older people were just always old, like it's an interesting thing. And now I'm 50 and I'm like, my brain still feels young, but now I'm in an older body but I probably don't look like what 50-year-olds looked like a while ago. And, I don't know. It's just the age is a fascinating one. But also, when we think about labels and identity, things like, your financial status, right? Like our mind
Mm,
compartmentalizes. Our mind likes to that's what it does. Like it does it. That's what it looks to do. It looks to put things in compartments. So it's like, okay, somebody is making a certain amount of money, they go in that compartment. They have a certain type of job, they go in that compartment. And so then it does not allow for our ability to see the depth and beauty and brilliance of their spirit, of their soul, of their entire being when we've started off with the label, right? And so where are we doing that without realizing it? And can we start to inquire and get curious? Maybe it's not as simple to just turn off the labels, but maybe we can just inquire and get curious about, well, what else is there that maybe I'm not seeing? Or what's another way of looking at this
Mm-hmm.
person or this situation that this label is
Yeah.
preventing me from seeing?
Yeah. And I love that. So yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's like seeing beyond what things look like. That's what I'm trying to say. Thank you. Yeah. So it's seeing beyond what it looks like to what it actually is.
Yeah.
Right. So when we can see beyond, so for example, so seeing beyond when we know somebody has cancer, for example, and they've been battling cancer for a long time. When they show up in a room, I don't, it's not a kindness to me to treat them with somebody who has cancer. So can I see beyond feeling sorry for them if that's what it is? Um, can I see beyond all of that and be in communion with them as the beautiful being and the heart being that they are? Right? Like I've heard so many people who are, because people don't, I see it, and people will treat that person as if they're fragile, right? Um, and it doesn't mean common courtesy. Hey, common courtesy should be given to all humans, whether they're whatever situation we're in. Common courtesy, please. Giving common courtesy to the elder who, comes in on the bus, for example, and there's no seats left. That's common courtesy to get up and give them your seat. Right? So that's different than, well, I'm not going to identify them as a senior. No, we see what's in front of us and we experience, can we be common courtesy for everybody, holding doors open for each other, all that kind of stuff. Yes, I can hold the door open myself, thank you very much, but there's a common courtesy. I think that's the words. I'm funny with words today. My brain must be rewiring
Yeah,
itself.
I love it. Why not?
And you know what? Yesterday or the day before, I almost had no words, and that was the awareness I had was, oh, my brain is rewiring itself.
Yes, yes,
And I went,
I love that. That's like my
okay,
mushy
cool.
brain from.
Thanks. Yes, exactly. Oh my God, that's so good. Yeah, that. Yeah, and so we don't want to, when I'm looking at somebody and I'm feeling sorry for their situation, that's different than common courtesy and compassion. That's different. If I'm identifying them as that person has this, that person has that, then what am I energizing and what am I giving charge to? Right? So I can acknowledge that, catch myself, right? So we don't want to pretend it's not happening. Acknowledge that and be compassionate for it, and yet see the divine that is within them. See who they are beyond all that. Right? But it can make people really uncomfortable, and I get that. Right? And yeah.
And we've made such progress, like in terms of things like racism and gender identity and sexuality. Like, 'cause those are the big labels that we've, as a society, have been become very aware of and have collectively agreed to, for the most part, to drop in terms of labels, right? And what those labels mean. But it's the exact same thing happening, but at a micro level and not a macro level, right? And so it really benefits us to go really deep in terms of looking at just the simple label and judgment of right and wrong, can and becoming aware of how your mind is doing that, and and suspending that and dropping the label and really, again, becoming curious. If you challenge your mind to become curious and start asking questions of what could be here that I'm not seeing. But to your point, like if somebody
Yeah, what's
has an illness or a diagnosis and now you've identified them, which we do it naturally, it's not ill-intentioned, we're just programmed that way. But if we could start to look at, well, who is that person beyond, outside of this label, and what are we feeding? Are we feeding that illness to a certain extent when we are allowing that to still be part of that identity? And is there an offering to the individual or the experience to, no longer feed that and to really see beyond it?
yeah, like treating people as people. It kind of reminds me of how many people have you heard of who don't share with somebody, sometimes even their family, that they're sick because they don't want to be treated differently, right? Yeah, and so there was this lady, and she had, she didn't let her family know she was dying of cancer because she didn't want them to treat her differently, right? And she didn't want their last moments with their mom to be about the sadness and the worry and the fear. That she wanted to experience the last days of her life and let them experience that with the joy and whatever that is, right? And so yeah, and so I think that's from one extreme to the other, really. Yeah, and there is no wrongness in any way that we choose to do it, right? And there just isn't, because and again, it's such a personal thing when it comes to that particular conversation. But yeah, it's just, if we could just see beyond the things.
Our brain does compartmentalize, does label, and that does constrict and refine and define our experience. And so if we can begin to notice, begin to be aware, and then just shift into curiosity about what else might be present for us in, every relationship and every exchange and every moment and every experience, something different might be created that's more aligned with you and your heart and your spirit and your soul and your desires.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone. We so appreciate. We love any likes, subscribes, comments, sharing. If this conversation might be beneficial to others, we appreciate it. It helps us tremendously. So thank you, and until next time.